Once upon a time, there lived a simple peasant known for his practicality but often caught in situations that tested his wits. One day, he decided to sell his cow at the fair, a sturdy animal that had served him well over the years. After much bargaining, he managed to sell it for 7 thalers. Feeling satisfied, he pocketed the coins and started his journey home. On the way, he passed a large, still pond surrounded by reeds and teeming with noisy frogs. As he drew closer, the frogs began their incessant croaking. Ike, ike, ake, ake. Their cries filled the air and seemed oddly rhythmic to the peasant, as though they were chanting something meaningful. He stopped and listened, and his face twisted into confusion. "What nonsense are these frogs croaking?" he muttered. To his ears, their ache sounded like they were saying 8. A wave of irritation swept over him. 7, not 8. "I sold the cow for 7 thalers, you foolish creatures." Determined to set the record straight, he stepped closer to the pond and shouted, "Listen, you water-splashing fools. I have 7 thalers, not 8. If you don't believe me, I'll count them out for you." He pulled the coins from his pocket, holding them up one by one. 1, 2, 3, 7. They are 7 thalers, 4 groschen to each. "Can you count better than that?" The frogs, indifferent to his demonstration, continued their croaking. Ike, 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 ike. A peasant grew more irritated. "Fine then, you think you're so clever? Count it yourselves." He threw the coins into the pond, watching as they splashed into the water and sank beneath the surface. He stood there waiting for the frogs to stop their racket and return his money. But they continued their relentless chant. After a long wait, he realized his foolishness. "You thick-headed, goggle-eyed splashers. You've got big mouths for screeching, but can't count worth a copper coin." Defeated, he trudged home, muttering curses at the frogs. Not one to be discouraged for long, the peasant decided to make up for his loss. A few days later, he bought another cow, slaughtered it, and carefully prepared the meat. His plan was to sell the meat at market, calculating that he could earn enough to recover his previous loss and still have the hide as profit. With his cart loaded with fresh cuts, he set off to town. Just before he reached the gates, a pack of dogs appeared, led by a large greyhound. The big dog barked, "Wow, wow, wow, wow," while the others yipped in unison. The peasant stopped and addressed the greyhound. "Oh, I see you've got an eye for my meat, haven't you? Well, I'm no fool. If I give you this meat, you'll have to pay for it." The dog barked again. "Wow, wow, wow. So you agree to the deal then?" the peasant said, pretending to negotiate down. "You'll bring me my payment in 3 days? And you'll make sure your friends don't eat it all?" The greyhound barked once more, and the peasant, treating it as a promise, unloaded the meat. "Remember," he said, wagging a finger at the dog, "I'll be expecting my money." The dogs fell upon the meat, barking and snarling as they devoured it. The peasant, hearing their commotion from a distance, said to himself, "They're all enjoying it now. But the big one is responsible for the payment." 3 days later, the peasant waited eagerly at home, expecting the greyhound to appear with his money. When no payment arrived, he grew impatient and marched into town to confront the butcher. "Where's my money?" he demanded. The butcher, confused, asked, "What money?" "For the cow." "Didn't the big greyhound bring you the meat 3 days ago?" the peasant replied. The butcher, realizing the absurdity of the claim, laughed and drove him away with a broomstick. Furious, the peasant vowed to seek justice. The peasant went straight to the royal palace, requesting an audience with the king. After much persistence, he was brought before the king and his daughter. Bowing low, he began his tale. "Your Majesty, frogs have taken my money, dogs have eaten my meat, and the butcher paid me with a stick. He narrated his misadventures in vivid detail, his earnestness so comical that the king's daughter, who had never laughed before, burst into uncontrollable laughter. The king, delighted to see her so amused, turned to the peasant and said, "I promised my daughter to the man who could make her laugh." "You shall marry her," the peasant scratched his head. "Your Majesty, I mean no offense, but I already have a wife and one is more than enough." "At home, it feels like I have a wife in every corner of the house," the king, taken aback but amused, said, "If you won't take my daughter, then I shall reward you. Return in 3 days, and I'll have $500 counted out for you." On his way out of the palace, the peasant passed a sentry who overheard the promise. $500? The soldier exclaimed. "That's a fortune. Share some with me." "Fine," said the peasant. "You can have $200. Come to the palace in 3 days, and they'll pay you." A passing Jew overheard this and offered to exchange coins with the peasant. "I will give you small coins now for the thalers you're promised," he said. 300 will do." The peasant agreed and took the bad coins the Jew offered, which were worth far less than promised. 3 days later, the peasant returned to the palace. The king, prepared to pay him, ordered, "Bring him $500. The peasant waved his hands. "Your Majesty, I gave away the money already." 200 to the sentry and 300 to the Jew. Both the soldier and the Jew stepped forward, claiming their shares. The king, furious at the trickery, ordered lashes to be counted out instead of coins. The soldier bore his punishment stoically, but the Jew wailed, "Alas, are these the heavy thalers?" Amused, the king gave the peasant permission to take as much treasure as he could carry from the royal treasury. Stuffing his pockets, the peasant left the palace, muttering to himself, "That rogue of a king, why couldn't he just hand me the money? Who knows if I've taken the right amount?" The Jew, eavesdropping, ran to the king to inform him of the peasant's words. The king, angered, summoned the peasant at once. However, the peasant refused to appear without a new coat. "I won't go before the king in rags," he insisted. The Jew, desperate to see the peasant punished, offered his own coat. The peasant wore it and went to court. When the king accused him of disrespect, the peasant shrugged. "Your Majesty, the Jew is lying. He's even claiming this coat is his." The Jew shouted, "It is my coat. I lent it to him." The king, seeing the absurdity, laughed and said, "You've outwitted him again. Take the coat and go." The peasant returned home richer than ever, saying, "This time, I've made it."